So this panel is all about building credibility in a crowded wellness space. We've got three amazing guests here. I will let them introduce themselves, but just to introduce myself quickly, I'm Sam. I'm one of the founders of Batch. So not a huge amount to do with the wellness space. However, I am a big partaker in it. So interested to see how some of these answers come out. I'm going to start with Mia, if you would like to introduce yourself and maybe give us a credibility challenge that you've had to overcome.
Hi, I'm Mia. I work for Healf. If you don't know Healf, we are a multi-retailer for premium health and wellbeing brands, everything from red light therapy, Aura, Whoop, and then a lot of supplements as well. A lot of our business is international brands that frankly have grown much quicker in the wellbeing space to date, but then a lot of UK brands are catching up and coming on board now as well. Credibility challenge. I think for us, being a multi-retailer, it's obviously cutting through the noise. There's so many brands jumping on. You probably all know a million creatine brands now, creatine gummies, the stories of the brands that have gone on Amazon with creatine, and then it turns out there's no creatine in them. So I think just making sure that we're curating something that customers can trust is what Healf is built upon and ultimately gives us credibility amongst all of the other retailers in the industry as well.
Thanks, Mia. And then Dom, we'll go to you next, mate.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dom. I'm a co-founder at FourFive. We make health and wellness supplements. Challenges, credibility challenges.
Biggest credibility challenge.
So we launched 7 years ago, and the challenges haven't stopped coming, I'll be perfectly honest. But initially we launched into the CBD category, which was and still is a bit of a shit show, to be honest with you. It, regulatory-wise, has had a lot of ups and downs that we've had to sort of get through. Thinking on our feet, we pivoted into electrolytes, creatine, functional mushrooms, and equally, in a lot of those categories, there's a lot of noise you've got to cut through, and I think it's just a constant challenge day to day, but one that we're managing to get through.
Nice. And Hywel?
Hi, I'm Hywel. I'm the co-founder of a brand called Eleat. So we're a high-protein breakfast brand. We sell ranges of overnight oats, cereals, granolas, and then I'm also a co-founder of a brand called Guts Up, which is a prebiotic gut health supplement. Challenges, I think, for us is, I guess, pretty much the meaning of this panel, but I think one of the ways we look at it is, yes, we might have our specific categories, but I feel like we compete against loads of great brands across the wellness space, and we often think about it that customers, have their hard-earned money and they might part ways with it for 2 or 3 brands that might improve their overall health and wellness. So we view ourselves having to sort of like prove we're credible cross-category, with lots of great brands that are here and that we mentioned in the panel, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting what you touched on there, Mia, that it is an incredibly crowded space. I think that's sort of the same for most businesses these days, as barriers to entry have become really low. Kind of a great time for consumerism and whatnot, but at the same time, like particularly in the health and wellness space, everyone claims to be science-backed, everyone claims to be premium, everyone's got a founder story, so I think consumers are starting to get a bit more confused and a bit more skeptical than ever, which sort of leads me on to our first sort of big question of the day, which is when someone discovers your business for the first time, why should they believe you or believe in what you're trying to say? I think I'll start with the founders on this one. You've kind of both entered categories where consumers already had reasons to be skeptical. Let's go with Hywel first. What was the hardest trust barrier to overcome in the early days?
I think when we enter the breakfast category, I guess as a category, it's one of the most kind of like long-standing. It's got some amazing legacy brands within it, Kellogg's, Nestle, loads of others. And actually, when we first launched, we probably looked at some international markets. So like the US had quite a few brands that done quite well. Some you might have heard of, like Magic Spoon, 3 Wishes and stuff like that. I don't sound it at all. I'm half Welsh, half South African, but my family live there, and there's a few brands in the South African market that have done quite well. Future Life, I don't know if anyone might have heard of that. So when we entered in the UK, there was probably 6 or 7 other sort of brands trying to do a similar thing within the kind of high protein breakfast space, and there's a couple of us that are still lucky enough to just about remain. But I think, within that kind of range of brands and what we were trying to do, and to be seen as credible, we kind of looked to approach it from a bit more of a sports nutrition standpoint. So in the early days, which is obviously something similar to your product, we went through like an informed sport certification. We tried to kind of prove that sort of athletes and aspiring athletes were like eating our product and brand, and really prove ourselves from a nutritional standpoint, which we felt, rightly or wrongly, maybe hadn't really been done in that category before. So we tried to take that kind of sports nutrition feel into a more sort of like traditional, maybe perhaps slightly sort of boring breakfast category. And we tried to prove ourselves that way. Yeah.
Nice. And yeah, you've just touched on the sort of informed sports certification. Dom, obviously that's been a big part of your brand and your products and making sure that you're certified. But have you ever really had a moment where you feel like consumers weren't getting it or they weren't listening to what you were saying? Or do you think that was key in building that trust early doors?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think a lot of people see that informed sport badge on the packaging. I'm not sure what you think, Hywel, but it definitely has that trust factor. As to whether they know what it means, I'm not 100% sure. But we've got a couple of different sort of customer profiles. In terms, we've got our D2C customers, who I would say are less informed. There's a lot of education to do with them, emails, social media, whatever. And then we got our sort of B2B in terms of professional sports teams, professional athletes, retailers, and they are very informed. So we have to send the batch certificates with every order that we send in. Nutritionists are just onto like ripping it apart. So it's yeah. In terms of the different sort of customers that we go after, like there's definitely more education to be done in terms of the wider sort of public.
So do you sort of see it as like a need to have now rather than an additional selling factor, or does it still work as both?
For us, we need to have it, just because we service a lot of professional athletes. So the fact that we look at it in two different ways. For professional athletes, they have to have it. For our customers, we're still trying to educate them. We're always educating them, but it just gives that extra layer of trust. You know, the fact that we've got to use certain, I'm sure you're the same in Healf, but like certain manufacturers, you've got to use BRC accredited, all that sort of stuff. It shows people that we've gone through the due diligence to make that product as good as it can be.
Yeah, nice, makes sense. And Mia, you're obviously in quite a unique position because you must see hundreds, thousands of brands come across your desk every day. Is there anything that you're particularly interested in, or conversely, are there any major red flags for the brand that you're aware of or look out for?
I think for us, it's really just comes down to the ingredients. It's a balance of ingredients and also the branding, because not always, but there is often a direct correlation between those brands that have that very like targeted, harsh branding, and I can look at a lot of brands and know that the ingredients are really shit or they're not. But to be honest, it's difficult for us to just rely on certification, because obviously we're taking brands from around the world and there's very different certification and processes in each country and region. The good thing is that as an industry in the UK and Europe and really around the world, governments are tightening up a lot. Cross-border in the past has been very easy for any brand to just ship anywhere and claim certain things and just ship their product into the market. But luckily, that's becoming more of a need, so you cannot just ship anything into countries now. So that's helping on that front, but for us it's really just ingredients, and we're very diligent with brands of, okay, you're saying this, but give us a certification of exactly where that ingredient is coming from, what type of it, where is it being sourced from. And luckily that's not my job, but we have some people that go fully into the details on that front.
Nice, great. And sort of back to you, Dom, obviously both yourself and George, your co-founder, were professional athletes. There's a lot of validation that comes with that, and I believe that's something that you guys have continued to do since you started. We've sort of found that at Batch, it's been a massive trust signal for us to dress a variety of celebs and whatnot for their various occasions. Do you think that was like a conscious move that you made? And do you think that really helped you get the business started, certainly from a trust signal perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what got us from 0 to 1, I think, at the beginning. We hadn't even launched, and we went, I think it was after a game, we were chatting to a journalist, being like, oh, we're looking to do this. And they wrote an article about it, which I think went to the Times, and being rugby players, we were extremely unprepared. And the website wasn't even live yet. So a couple of days later, we were rushing to get the website live and switch it on, not really know what we're doing. But like orders started coming through straight away, and I was like, "Oh, this is easy."
Good feeling.
Little did I know it wasn't easy at all. But like without that, like it was very clickbaity. By the way, we were talking about CBD and cannabis and professional sports, so it was like an easy thing for someone to write about. But it got us from 0 to 1, and we stuck with it. And you know, I think it serves us well today. I think again, talking to credibility and trust, like we put our names behind it because like we wouldn't put our names behind it if we didn't think it was good enough. So yeah, still going with faces on the front of the packs today.
Yeah, you've got to be founder-led at some point. People buy from people ultimately. How performance cereal's not really an obvious category. What was the sort of inspiration behind that? I don't know if people are like, it's now become a category, but we're going through their breakfast cereal aisle going like, I wish this was more performance-based. What was the thought process and how did you start to build authority in that space that consumers weren't really actively looking for?
Yeah, without giving you my boring sales pitch. But
Go on, give us a bit.
I think one thing we looked at, there's two sides to it. One, if I'm being completely honest, growing up, I loved eating cereal. But as I started to take my health and fitness a bit more seriously, you probably start to work out that it's not the best thing for you. So there's a bit of a passion around that like product category and wanting to do something healthy within that space. But maybe like the better answer is, I think if you look at quite a few other categories, things that have done really well is taking big categories and kind of that are maybe a bit outdated and transforming them with something that fits sort of modern society. So my personal belief is that on the whole, society is looking to be healthier, eat healthier. People's understanding, again, on the whole, is getting better in terms of ingredient quality. And people, I believe, are going to start to sort of look through those type of categories that aren't really offering any nutritional relevance. In saying that, as a quick caveat, the breakfast cereal space and many of the brands we think of have a massive place in feeding loads and loads of families across the country. So I'm not saying those type of products shouldn't exist, but I think there should be other products that can cater to perhaps a slightly different market. And then if you go through kind of, you know, protein shakes are essentially just healthier milkshakes, the ones that are sold in supermarkets at least. My personal opinion is that protein bars are just a healthier chocolate bar, really. Not that that's a bad thing, but you know, people like to not necessarily make massive changes to their routine. So if they eat breakfast cereals or granolas or overnight oats or porridge or whatever that we provide, if you can provide people with quite a natural, easy switch to their routine and give them something that's better for them, you're not asking them to change their habits dramatically. Therefore, they're more likely to adopt it and more likely to perhaps keep on purchasing. And yeah, I think that can be seen across a range of other sort of categories. I think even as Jamie and I were speaking later around canned and sweets, I think like that use case has been proven by lots of other categories, and we didn't think, at least in the UK, it had been done before. And as you say, it's starting to evolve now into a bit more of a category. Again, if you look to the US, there are whole aisles of kind of protein breakfast companies, huge brands over there that have done very well, and the competition over there is quite big. I think we're 95% direct-to-consumer company. We have about 20,000 subscribers online, so doing all right, but relatively speaking, quite small. But I think the UK retail has taken quite a long time to potentially evolve and will do. So my hope, obviously, is that in a few years' time, that category will emerge much more strongly, and you will be able to walk into a Sainsbury's or a Tesco and see quite a clearly defined part of the aisle that is, you know, has brands more like Eleat in than perhaps your typical Kellogg's and Nestle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the point you're making is, I see a lot of people taking outdated categories and trying to do something new with it. You see it loads in food and bev, like all things butter in the butter industry, and candy kittens, as you said, citizens of soil and olive oil. We're trying to do a similar thing with sweets and with batch. So I think there's access to opportunity there,
Sure.
Definitely. And Amir, to you, listening to both of those stories, what matters more from your perspective? Is it a great product? Is it a great founder, great proof, or is it a bit of everything?
Yeah, I think the boring answer is that it is a bit of everything. I think it's also quite hard to have one without the other. But for us, it's realistically, as health even if you've got great product and great ingredients and the rest of it, if you're not a nice person, we're just not going to work with you, because we're in a nice position now. We don't need to. So I would say being a great founder is important, but I think that also to be a great founder, it's probably what is making you push those other things and make them a priority across the business, because I think we see so many brands that make claims and they say they're something, but actually they're not. And it's so important that you are pushing that across every part of your business, every person in the team. So even for Healf, our data team know that the curation standard is what is principle. And I lead commercial, and there's so many brands I'd love to bring on because it would easily hit my KPIs if we did. But we just know that it's just an absolute no, because we will lose consumer trust completely if we ever drop the ball at all on that front. So yeah, it's definitely a mixture of all three, and that's very hard to gauge sometimes, especially the founder piece from one call or two, but it becomes quite clear quite quickly.
Do you think someone can have two out of those three things and still win? Founder, product, and proof? Do they 100% need all three?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it really depends on the category at the moment. There's so many that are oversaturated, and then there's so many that, especially once they kind of boil over from the US, and then other markets are like, oh, there's not, I don't know, going back to creatine, but for example, there's not a creatine in the UK yet, and then everyone piles in. Then it becomes quite hard to only have two of the three, because again, it's very easy to see like which two or three will rise above the rest. And I think in all industries that you see that. But yeah, if it's undersaturated and you're first mover, then maybe you can make it with two of the three. But for the most part, you're better off having all three.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been quite an interesting transition over the last sort of 5, maybe 10 years, where being founder-led has become really important, and it's almost an expectation from consumers. It probably builds into that trust piece. Who am I buying from? And I talk to founders all the time who are like, oh, for fuck's sake, am I going to have to do like a walk and talk in front of camera? Some people comes easier to them than others, you know what I mean? Great, okay, thanks for that, guys. And moving on to the sort of second section, which is more really about what customers actually care about. I do it, I'm sure we all do it. I think we can sometimes overthink what the customer wants, what they actually hear. A phrase I always remind myself, and don't take this the wrong way, is that your customers are stupid. And so like, if you try and give them too much information, and I mean that sincerely, people don't pick it up. I've got best friends who have been following my journey since it started, who still ask me questions that I'm like, how do you not know that? And it's always like a bit of a light bulb moment that actually maybe we're not feeding the right information at the right time in the right way. So I guess let's go to Dom next. Do you think in your space consumers have become more educated or more overwhelmed?
Both. I mean, you've actually got Sunder's coming on later, isn't he? Sunder from Tonic.
Yeah.
Like you've got, I think social media's been both a blessing and a bit of a curse in terms of educating customers, because you've got guys like Sunder who are doing like great work, and James Smith, I think he's like brilliant in terms of like breaking everything down, like really scientific, like evidence-based knowledge for customers. But then, and you mentioned earlier, sort of the barrier to entry for brands is like super low. So like anyone can like whip something up, get it on a website and launch it within a couple of months. Yeah. And I think if you were to look in a Meta Ads library, you'll see 100 best data and electrolytes in the UK, right? So it's like, we're just getting bombarded all the time, and like picking through that is still super difficult. But there are some really, honest brands coming out of the whole thing. Again, like Tonic, Salt, James Smith's new Tonic, just coming out and educating people like really well on how it should be, because I think there's a lot of historical brands who have sort of taken over supermarket shelves over the years, and with like really like crappy products, to be honest, like underdose, full of bulkers and fillers. Yeah. And there's this new wave of like startups coming through, and like the best of them are trying to educate customers. They are properly dosing products, and that's the right way to do it. But in terms of how customers are seeing that, I think it's still like super confusing.
Yeah, I agree. As a customer, it can be quite hard to sort of navigate. Hywel, is there something through your journey that you thought customers would value that maybe they didn't?
Yeah, we were actually chatting about before the panel. I think one of the things I or underestimated for our categories. So we're quite a functional product. I'd say our biggest sort of attraction to customers around sort of like macro-based sort of like facts around the product, protein, fiber, sugar content. And I think we actually massively undervalue taste when we first started our journey. So we're sort of 4 years in now. I'd say in the first 2 years, our product probably wasn't good enough in terms of repeat purchase, which basically makes or breaks F&B brands really. And so I think, yeah, kind of having that overall picture, I think sometimes you can get quite drawn into your USPs as to what you should be, and then you forget to some extent, particularly within food, maybe a little bit less within supplements. I guess there's still a taste element, but within food, people tend to stick to habits they enjoy. I think there are other elements though. When we first started out, being plant-based or vegan-friendly was like a big claim. Now there's still some great brands in that space, but it's probably becoming less, not necessarily less popular, but less of a certainty to have. We're seeing in our space being gluten-free is like massively overtaking that plant-based claim, for instance. So I think stuff does ebb and flow with the times. And then the big one that we were chatting around is around sweeteners. So we currently have a bit of a mixed range. Our leading products are overnight oats products, 100% natural ingredients. Our cereal, to have a low sugar sort of EFSA claim, still uses stevia. Some might argue one of the quote unquote better or more natural sweeteners. We've actually made a decision to change 2 ranges of cereals and granolas to be, again, 100% natural ingredients. They won't carry a low sugar EFSA claim. It'll be significantly lower sugar than your typical kind of breakfast, supermarket sort of breakfast cereal or granola. But we believe the direction of travel is going that way in terms of consumers, whereas perhaps 4 or 5 years ago, people were more fixated on sugar content. And if you could have 0 or 1 sort of grams of sugar, no one really cared how that taste or sweetness was coming into the product. So I think stuff shifts, and I guess we feel, rightly or wrongly, I don't know, but we feel that if we don't shift with that or don't kind of like lean into our data that we're seeing, we'd get left behind to some extent.
Yeah, 100%. It's just, I used to work for a soft drinks brand called Punchy, and we used to bang vegan and gluten-free on the label, like as if there was some big claim. It's like, well, yeah, obviously it's vegan and gluten-free. Like, what else are you putting in there? Mia, for you, again, you've got a pretty good view on the industry from where you sit. What do you believe consumers are actually looking for today? What are sort of the key things that you're pulling out?
I think it's, to your point earlier, we've got the full range of customers. We've got some that maybe are a little bit more stupid, and then we've got the ones that are so knowledgeable, and obviously we're making these big claims of only curating the world's best products, and we have to live up to that, and we have customers that really put us through our paces and are asking us for the documentation and everything as well, and holding us accountable, which is great because frankly it only makes us better. So I think we've got the full range of what customers are looking for. We've got the customers that are really new to the industry, or maybe they're just doing dry Jan and they're like, oh, let me get on the supplement train or whatever it may be. And then we've got other customers that are taking 20 grams of creatine a day and like really trying to be the next Brian Johnson. So it depends on, again, category, but we see the full range. I think there's definitely a general move towards everyone just in their kind of day-to-day life becoming more aware of what they're putting in their body. But I think that it's also just constantly evolving, because then we have customers now saying, well, is it good to be taking supplements? Like, that's still something that's technically processed. So opening up more conversations, and I think there's no perfect state, but everyone is definitely becoming more educated. It's just a varying level of that education.
It's always interesting, isn't it? Like, for years, creatine's been the supplement to take, and then recently on my socials, I've been seeing people say, like, don't take creatine, it's really bad for you. And so you've got all of this influence pushing people in different directions. Everyone's a bit like, well, what am I supposed to do? And Mia, a follow-up question for you on that. Is there anything that founders are still getting wrong?
Lots of things. I think that a lot of founders get caught in a very tough position where the industry is evolving so quickly. But you still, to be honest, and I think you guys probably see this as well, to grow the business, you also need to be in front of people. So it's that trade-off between going into doors that potentially aren't, I don't want to speak badly on anyone else, but potentially aren't kind of holding up to the standard that they should be. or have ulterior motives, such as white labelling and things like that. But especially in the UK, to grow your brand, you need to be in those doors and getting kind of retail especially. It's very difficult because I think founders know where they want their brand to be and how they want to position it, but then ultimately they probably have investors for the most part that are also forcing them to just grow as quickly as possible, and there's that constant trade-off. But I think that we are, hopefully Healf is helping as well in that sense of getting them out into more places without having to kind of choose one or the other.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so Dom, you've obviously got an audience that, you know, we spoke about it a little bit earlier, slightly understands informal sport, maybe some don't, but you've gone heavily after B2B and athletes, etc. You're an athlete yourself.
Ex-athlete.
I don't know, mate, you're still in pretty good shape. Did you build the consumer first or the product first?
Product first.
Yeah.
I'm second guessing myself now. Product first. No, the product is always the foundation of everything that we do. Like we never, we'll go after use cases more than like a specific audience or customer. Mm-hmm. So, but up until about 2 years ago, it was a slow process because it was myself and George being like, right, what do we do with a cauldron in the kitchen, putting stuff together? But that's not what we're doing, by the way. We did use nutritionists. Yeah. But yeah, just picking that use case, and obviously to your point, we need to look at market trends. Like there's this sort of happy medium of on where everything aligns. That's usually where we play. So like more recently, you mentioned there's a lot of creatines come onto the market. We'll hopefully chat about that in Healf later. But we've recently launched creatine and creatine products. Very much not wanting to be in the performance. So 2 products, not wanting to be in the performance angle, but the trend that we see coming is more in the health and wellness angle. So mixing that with like magnesium glycinate, we feel like we're the first to market with that. And we now have a nutritionist in-house and product developer in-house to sort of go after that use case of helping the brain and body. But yeah, that's it's not easy, and there's a constant like tug of war between the commercial side and sort of the customer need state side.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a pretty difficult one to navigate when you're starting to bring out lots of new products and trying to win a new market, but not ostracize your current market, I suspect. How? Back to breakfast, mate. It's your topic of knowledge. Obviously, breakfast is a habit product, and I'd imagine that most people fail not because they don't like the product, but they just forget. How do you build behaviour rather than just transactions, and did you have to do much education to get there?
Good question. Yeah, it's very habitual, but I think that has positives and negatives for us. I think if you can provide someone with a product and like a habit that they, I guess by nature of the word, can like stick to and feel the benefits from, then I think you are in a good position because those customers are going to be quite sticky. In saying that, for us, being heavily D2C focused, one of our biggest challenges is might keep subscribers on for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, but then that's when flavour and taste comes into it, or product variety to like keep them on board, because however good someone's breakfast might be, hopefully if they use us, they think it's great. To some extent, people can still get bored of food choices, right? We all like to change things up every now and then, maybe other than a coffee order or something. So there is that kind of challenge. I think for us, we talk about it a lot in terms of sort of committing to using the product. I mean, as consumers out there, I'm sure you've probably seen every brand. I'm pretty sure now every D2C brand will have a 30-day money-back guarantee. But it is clever because what it does to the customer, one, it de-risks it. And I think earlier we were talking about credibility and trust. I think one has to remember for brands like us, our average order value online is like £40, £45. It's not like going down the cereal aisle and parting way with £3.50 and trying it. If you don't like it, you're not going to be too bothered. I think if you're spending that amount of money, most people want to like it.
Yeah. Sure.
So having that type of thing, one, builds trust for them to purchase it in the first place. But secondly, I think within health and wellness, and I guess the space we operate in, if for 2 days straight you eat and drink correctly, realistically nothing's going to happen to you. Same way with exercise, you have to commit to certain things over time, and therefore, if we can encourage our customers to, for instance, we have a lot of meshing around committing to us from a month. If you don't feel better within yourself, you can have your money back, no problem. What we're trying to do there, I guess, is create habit, but also educate our customers around the fact that you're going to have to commit to certain changes in your sort of like lifestyle and nutrition to feel the benefits, both more mentally, probably before you feel them physically. Have I answered your question very well there?
Yeah, you have, and you've brought out more products to supplement that. Getting boards, overnight oats, I love. They're a great product. Was that a conscious decision? Was that just you saw an opportunity in overnight oats, or was it like, how do we make sure that we retain those subscription customers or the customers that are regular purchasers? And do you think there's more to go with that? Do you see other opportunities?
Yeah, a little bit both. So I think yes, in terms of variety for customers. I think the other thing, two things. One, like linking into market trends. I think we started to realise or see a lot of the kind of trend in the market for healthier breakfast, people making their own overnight oats and that type of thing. I think that product was trending to some extent. The other thing with our customer is we found that actually one of like the biggest sort of what we describe as a lived benefit, i.e. like something that they don't necessarily see on pack, but something they experience from the product, is being like fuller for longer, keeping energized through to lunch. And that's partly because of the satiety of protein and fiber, but we actually felt that our cereals and granola options were quite low calorie versus what our consumers were wanting. They were wanting a breakfast that kept them full through to lunch. One of the big like pain points was mid-morning snacking, for instance, from having products that are quite high in sugar and spiking and then dropping. So we actually wanted like a slightly larger breakfast in terms of its nutritional offering, which we felt overnight oats could do. So our product has got sort of another 25% protein. It's almost double the calories. It had other benefits, seeds and stuff like that within it that we felt could service our consumer. And final point, now shut up. But our customer is a bit different to what people would expect. So we're not really upselling a Cocoa Pops buyer. There are lots of other, what I would phrase as, and great brands that are maybe in that kind of better for you element of the category. One of the big challenges with our kind of nutritional makeup that we touched upon is commercials and RRP and stuff like that. So we've decided as a brand to be at a point in the market whereby our nutritional offering probably attracts customers who maybe have like eggs on toast or makes their own porridge or avocados, whatever you might want to have. And therefore, those breakfasts are traditionally a bit larger and our overnight offering kind of more aligned to what they might previously be eating. Again, another long-winded answer, but hopefully that explains it. Yeah.
No, it's good. And there's a whole other topic that you sort of just touched on there, which probably don't quite have time for. It would be interesting is using expensive ingredients, but trying to make sure you maintain margin to do wholesale and
Tough,
get the right RRP. It's probably a whole panel in itself, that one, to be honest. But sticking with the retention piece, back to you, Mia. When you look at retention and retention data across your platform, what do you think separates products people try from products that people stick with?
It's a really good question. I think for the most part, we've got a pretty healthy subscription rate across most brands. It obviously varies within categories and brands though. I think it's less of a question of trying a category and whether it's sticky or not. It's more so whether trying the brand, and then they often will switch to a different brand, try a few, and then land on one ultimately. I think that there's definitely some categories that have a bit more of an up and down subscription rate, and that's really due to the hype. So, for example, we're seeing a lot of spikes in like hair growth sales at the moment because that's kind of trending, at least in the wellness girlies era.
And the boys.
Okay, great. But red light, for example, it also depends on time of year. So electrolytes will spike massively more towards the summer months or around the London Marathon. So yeah, it's quite interesting to dive into the data because if you just look at it from a top line, you can draw certain conclusions. But actually, if you're looking on seasonality and all of the parts that play into retention, there's often multiple kind of causation factors that are at play. But yeah, again, I'd say it's more of a transition between brands versus categories. Usually people have, by the time they come to purchase, they've already done the education and decided that this is something they want to commit to for a couple of months at least.
And do you offer like cross-brand subscriptions? Could you subscribe to a category? And if not, why not?
No, we do products level subscription to be honest, at this stage, it's mostly just because we are 4 years old and
Complexity.
trying to grow as quickly as possible. There's so many priorities, but it's definitely a good idea for something in the future. And then actually last point to add to that is, I think that there's often a lot of drop-off in subscription being a multi-retailer is on pricing. So this is the battle that we often have, and why it's difficult when you are trying to be competing with other retailers that frankly don't really care about the brands or the ingredients or anything like that. All they care about is the price and getting the sales on that demand. And that is often where, with brands that are kind of more mass market, it becomes a price play for customers, because ultimately Healf might do all of the education and be telling you why a brand is good. But then if you Google it and you can find it £2 cheaper somewhere else, economy is tight. Everyone's going to buy the £2 cheaper place. So yeah.
Great, thank you for that, Mia. So I think we've probably got time for one more question. I'll make sure we have a bit of time at the end for some Q&As if anyone's got any. But it would be remiss of me to be sat in a physical retail store and not touch on physical retail. It's been sort of quite brand and e-com based. Physical retail's obviously been quite a big trust signal over time. We've, for Batch, we do 80% of our sales in store, a significant amount. Again, that's down to trust. You're buying something, you're waiting for it, you want to know it fits you, you've got the right size. Kind of a bit of a similar question for all of you, because I know you all do a bit. You've got a concession in Selfridges, right?
As of this week, yeah.
Okay, nice. And both of you two do loads in different, you've got lots of doors across lots of different places. Do you see that physical retail is a trust driver for you? And alongside that, have you felt that, opening a new major retailer has driven sales across the rest of your portfolio? Do you want to start, Mia? You've got the mic.
Yeah, sorry. For us, I think we're coming at it from a slightly different angle, because obviously Healf is completely online today, all e-commerce. And so far we've done all right with that. For us, it's more driven by brands, so brands wanting to be in more physical locations. And I think it goes back to that kind of potentially, and we'll see the data shortly, slightly more historical view of like, to grow, we have to be in physical locations and kind of be viewable that way. However, I think, again, it comes to the category and who that buyer is, because a lot of the younger generations do a lot of their buying online, especially in categories where you are subscribing. You're not going to go to the shop every month and buy it. You just want it to turn up at your door. However, I think especially with international brands and when there is a lot of competition in each category, being able to see those products in real life and then make a decision is helpful. So yeah, we're putting our foot in the door. We've got Harvey Nichols open now and Selfridges and a few other interesting conversations that I can't share too much on, but we'll always keep it quite premium and where we have control, because again, it for a lot of places it can become just like a completely commercial play and there's no brand interest there. But yeah, some of our brands one brand in particular is in Costco's in the US, and they did incredibly well in Costco. They are now going into Costco in the UK, which this is probably going to make me sound really silly, but I just didn't know we even had Costco in the UK, because there's not one at least around London, I don't think. But yeah, they're going to try that, and we're fully supportive. Again, I think having that like more closed consumer stance is interesting, but again, that's an international brand, so they'd be completely different to a UK brand and the strategy there.
Yeah, nice. And Dom, same question for you. Has physical retail been a trust driver, and has it driven uplift across the rest of your portfolio?
Yeah, definitely. It's I think customers expect a value of due diligence done by. So, for example, we were in Holland and Barrett, Sainsbury's, Boots. We kind of are, especially in the early stages of business, piggybacked off their trust for us, and the fact that they've done due diligence put us on the shelf. Now, I think to your point earlier, I'd say that that trust might be misplaced in some circumstances where there's some commercial aspects at play. But it's definitely something that we've, like retail is 70% of our business at the minute. So we definitely see the umbrella effect of that, of people buying in stores, trying the product, liking it, and then coming back to us online. But we very much lean into it and support that. Like, we don't just push. In the past, we've, for example, run ads with retailers, like pushing people to retail just to build sort of that brand awareness of the product and the trust.
Yeah, nice. and how I'm actually going to change the question slightly, just so we don't repeat the answers. You guys have obviously, I know for a fact, done loads of sampling across your journey. How big a sort of strategic play was that when you started? Obviously, taste is a massive factor. You've got to get people to try it before they're going to buy it. Do you still do that? Was it the right thing to do, and will you do more of that going forward?
Yeah, for sure. I think, so for us, we're, it's probably a good job you did change the question, because we're 99% of revenues online. And yeah, I was trying to scramble around, like, what am I saying? And for us, that's worked. And there's, as you touched upon, there's a whole nother debate around kind of RRPs and retail and different reasons why we haven't gone into retail. But I think sampling's a really interesting one. Again, going back to that point I've made a couple of times around food and taste, ultimately, no matter your proposition in terms of health, on the whole, in most categories, I think, like, people still want to enjoy it at least to a certain level of taste. There's some great brands. I mean, Hywel literally, made their name on nutrition first, taste second. So you don't necessarily have to be all about taste. But I think most people who would have the product would probably say it's more than palatable enough for them to, continue using it. So there's an element there. And yeah, we try to build, I guess, some trust through events. We've done literally hundreds and hundreds of getting people to try the product, and we've seen some reasonable conversion on that. I think, to be honest, it's actually something we have scaled back a little bit. One, it's quite exhausting, time-consuming.
Time and effort, isn't it?
But also, I think potentially we would have better conversion on that sampling if we had more retail outlets where people could, try it one time. They walk past it in the store. I've had that once before. I'll give it a go and try sort of one unit. So it's actually a big driver of our business, literally starting now to, in a few conversations with a few different retailers around getting the right proposition in that we're both happy with and they're both happy with. But we would like to offer more consumers the chance to, as we phrase it internally, try one pouch. And I do think that would unlock another kind of segment of customers that wouldn't necessarily buy our products online. And we're 85% subscription, and some people are just anti-subscriptions in general. So I think it's a really interesting factor. We see it having value across more than just the sampling, though. So we're basically a D2C business. Biggest part of our marketing is Meta. Our best performing ads by a country mile are typically founders at events talking to customers about the product, explaining it to people. So, for instance, we had a big stand at London Marathon. Our main goal from that event wasn't really a sales number. It was more like a content output number, which I know to some people sounds a bit odd. But fundamentally, that could serve us our next 3, 4, 5 months of ads.
Very authentic, isn't it?
Yeah. And so like we have different goals around kind of like going to those events, and again, building on credibility of the events we go to. So I would make an argument that if you're a brand like associated with London Marathon, that's quite a prestigious, iconic event. If you're a brand that's in the room at that expo with athletes or ambassadors that we have running in it, you can kind of leverage that kind of credibility and stuff like that. So I think events are cool. I also quite like in-person experiences. I think that's quite a nice part of health and wellness and physical and mental well-being. So I quite like events in general, but pros and cons, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you, Mia, Dom, Hal. That's been a great conversation. I could ask you loads more questions, but I'm going to shut up now and put it out to the floor.
First of all, I just want to say thanks. That was so interesting and super insightful. I'm passionate about this area. One of the reasons is because I'm part of a business called Growth Studio. We run accelerator programs for startups. And this year we're launching Breakout Wellness, which we think is the first ever accelerator program for wellness and health startups. So it's great to see two thriving brands here already from a UK base. And we are all about the UK. So I would really like to direct this question to you, Mia, if that's okay, because I know you do embrace many international brands and you're bringing incredible new products to our market. But what do you think about the health of the UK wellness scene in terms of new innovations and startups? And what are you most excited about as well?
Oh, okay. Great question. I think, being very candid, to date, it has been a lot of UK innovation has been very much dictated by what's happened in other markets, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that a lot of brands some international brands have almost missed out on the opportunity because, for example, the US, because that's where most of them are from, is such a big market that UK and other markets just haven't been a priority for them. They're already getting billion-dollar valuations just selling in the US, so I'd be quite happy with $1 billion valuation too. And so a lot of UK businesses and startups have kind of like seen that and then created basically the same product in the UK and different branding and obviously under a different name. And I think that that's really interesting. And I think that the more competition, the better, to be honest. And I often get the question of, you know, oh, you don't want to have too many brands per category. And I do agree with that to a degree. But some people are saying, well, why don't you just have like one electrolyte brand, for example? And obviously we have some that are bigger than others. But I think competition is really healthy. And I say this to brands every day as well. Some of them have said, why can we have category exclusivity? And, you know, everyone's got a prize. No, I'm joking. But no, we really stand upon, it holds the other brands accountable to do better. And we want to give customers that choice as well. So we're selecting and curating the best brands in each category, but then having that choice within that. And I think the more that are coming out of the UK, the better. I just think that it is a lot of the data and the research of what those new up-and-coming categories are coming from other markets. So it's very difficult to kind of be on it from the UK. But yeah, no, there's plenty of UK businesses that have kind of drawn ahead, at least in this market.
Just one thing I think I was just thinking about there as you're chatting is, I don't know what your perspective from a UK business, but I think the fundraising landscape in the US is like amazing. Brands are very, very well backed. I think in the UK there are loads and loads of great brands that probably many of us have never even heard of. I think it's such a frighteningly competitive and difficult fundraising landscape that many of them maybe fall by the wayside before they're big enough to maybe go on things like Healf or like be recognised. So I think that's an interesting thing of the UK journey that I think maybe in the last year has got slightly better, but I would say in the time that we've been around as brands is very, very difficult. I think that's potentially something that maybe like slightly stifles UK innovation. So things like this Accelerate sound perfect. To give those brands a chance, because I think there are lots of good ideas out there, but it is difficult. Yeah. Sorry to, yeah.
Hi, you guys spoke really well and I really enjoyed the lecture, so thank you. You guys obviously enjoy your products, you're pretty passionate about it, but I'm curious to know, why does your team love your products so much above the competition?
Why does our team, our business team, is in the team? Oh, good question. Because we make them. I think, especially we've launched. So we started in CBD 7 years ago, moved into functional mushrooms, electrolytes, creatine. We've recruited so that everyone's part of the process to develop the products in-house at the minute. Everyone's got a role. We're a small team, we're a startup as well, which means that everyone has an active role to play in tasting, developing, going out, sampling to customers, and everyone believes in it. We're lucky enough to have a pretty tight-knit but really good, strong team. We do actually call them a team, back from the rugby days, but they're all just fully behind it, and they see the effect also that customers have. They see the feedback that comes back, and that's always a big motivator. So yeah, I think that's a good question though, and yeah, Hugh.
I think culture is a massive thing, and having a very clear direction as a business for people to get behind. I think both you two as a brand have that. It's quite clear what you're trying to achieve, how you're achieving it, you're good lads, and I think that makes it easy for your team to back you and therefore back the product.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, so it's not too much to add. I think we just think there's some really great brands in our category that I think are doing really cool things in their own right. We still fundamentally believe that our offering's a bit different to what those brands are in terms of our competition. So, some of the stuff we talked about earlier in terms of ingredient quality, product quality, and how the category evolves I'm still very passionate that our product offerings are different to anything that's out there in the UK, and we can have a place in that wider category. But I think we're always very honest with ourselves that there are lots of great, I'm sure you think the same, there's lots of great brands and there is lots of great competition, and it's probably good for you, as you say, because I guess the harder we all push each other, we probably get a bit better.
What's two things that you like your team loves best about your cereal?
Ingredient quality would be our biggest one. In terms of, and then also brand. But yeah.
Same question to me. Trust and transparency. That's and taste as well. Actually one of the longest parts of our MPD process is tasting and getting the taste right. So everyone loves the taste. Watermelon launched last week, so I'm try.
Great plug.
Maybe a somewhat related question for Dom. So you mentioned starting in CBD and then moving to electrolytes, creatine. In 1 year's time, there'd inevitably be some sort of like wellness maxing trend. So how do you decide what to go into? And if you do decide to go into it operationally, how does that look? So it's fast enough to get to market, but not too fast that the product quality gets damaged and credibility takes a hit.
Fiber maxing, I think, is the next one. Look, we work quite closely with the retailers, and again, to that point earlier about finding sort of that middle ground of what fits us as a brand, what's trending, what we believe in. That usually steers, and what's happening abroad as well. That usually steers where we go. How do we get it to market? Our average time to market's around 6 months. Now we've got 6 months ago, we brought in someone to help us with this in-house, because previously we would be using nutritionists from rugby clubs and going out all around, and it was taking us about 12 to 18 months to launch a product. So to speed that up, we've hired someone in-house. And in the neck, we're going to be bringing like 3 new products to market this year based off all the trends that we're seeing. We've got some really trusted manufacturers that we use, and we're lucky enough that, and this is one of the benefits of being in retail and having a big footprint, that we're some of their sort of biggest customers now, in terms of they will work more closely with us. And this is a massive pain point for smaller brands, because I know for a fact that a number of times they've been pushed off the line to put us on when we were like, come on, sort it out, like Holland and Barrett need this, and but we are where we are, so we'll take it. So they work really closely with us and sort of will help sort of fast track that development process to get it done. We've built a team in-house now. We've built really good relationships with like really trusted manufacturers, and then from the market perspective, we have a few different touch points.
Hi. Likewise, thank you for that. Super interesting. I wanted to just pick up on what you were saying about the education piece. So I guess for you, obviously, you want to educate the consumer. This is healthy cereal. You should feel something different within 30 days, invest into it, etc. I guess, like, how wide do you take your education? Do you also say, sleep well, you should exercise, don't just have a healthy breakfast, have a healthy lunch and dinner as well? Or are you just focused on the education of the cereal?
Interesting point. I think, for us, we look to, one of our things we like to try and do is add further value. So we have a couple of nutritionists and ambassadors for the brand. We will regularly put out content around health and well-being more generally even. A little example of that recently is like we recently changed our kind of welcome booklet first customers get, and that actually has 5 healthy lunch recipes, 5 healthy dinner recipes at less than 30 minutes, for instance, trying to play into what you're talking about, which is actually something we think we probably could get better at. Because ultimately, I think it probably all comes back to that trust point as a brand. But I think as a consumer, if you feel like you're buying into a brand, okay, that's catering for breakfast, but actually is helping me with other aspects of my life, you're probably a little bit more likely to become like a brand advocate. We are trying to put information out there. I think London Marathon, I think I mentioned earlier as well, around that time we will put stuff out in terms of emails and blogs and stuff like that, talking around fueling for a marathon, And actually, it's an interesting one because when we're at London Marathon, you know, you get people who are new come up to you and be like, "Should I have this on the breakfast on the morning of a marathon?" And we're like, "No, do not do that." So I would like to think that we, because of our passion is in that kind of category, hopefully that reflects as a team and founders. Hopefully that reflects in terms of like the content we're putting out. And yeah, I believe it would be better for a consumer to feel like a brand that's helping them along their whole journey rather than just like pushing one eating occasion on them. Hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, we're in the home gym space.
Yeah.
So we sell dumbbells basically as our main product.
Yeah.
So we always have this debate of like, should you just educate on this and strength training, or should you like go out of your niche a little bit and start talking about nutrition and sleep? And yeah, I think we're still trying to figure out kind of, is it helpful, not helpful? Is it kind of like wasting customer attention by doing that? Not sure. So yeah,
I would say personally, as an opinion, I would say helpful because I think people are more likely to buy your product and maybe upsell other products if they've like stayed on their like health journey, so to speak, not to be too cheesy. But I don't know if you disagree or agree. I'd say probably helpful to educate outside of just your core product. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
Hey guys, so I think traditionally, like credibility has kind of come from being super professional, sleek, like faceless corporations. But recently there's been a switch to like founder first content, which obviously Batch, you guys do that exceptionally well. Do you think the sort of future, especially with social media being what it is now, is more of these like face founders and like showing the process and the fuck ups, or do you think it's sort of back to like faceless corporations that seem to run on like a level above just like an actual human?
100% think it's the founder-led content. I think there's actually a panel afterwards about that, isn't there? Look, you see people like Salt are the guys that are doing it like incredibly well at the minute. Just documenting everything, getting it out there. Like people want to feel, especially if you're building a community, people want to feel like a part of that, like what's happening. If you can show the whole process of making the product, like that helps build the trust, like going to manufacturers and the packaging process, how it's delivered, and just in terms of how social media is going at the minute, like people are just digesting that at the minute and just watching it, and it's such a low barrier to entry for brands as well. Like it's free. Well, I'd say it's not free. It takes your heart and soul sometimes, but you know, anyone can do it. In terms of just picking up a phone, documenting, and annoyingly, like we've sometimes just spent horrid amounts of money making these amazing videos, and then it's the little shitty one that you make that tends to like get hundreds of thousands of views. But I definitely think that is the way forward, in my opinion. I don't know if you think different.
Yeah, I would say that there's a really clear trend across all brands that the ones that spike are the ones that have a founder that's kind of got that face across mostly socials, or it's the kind of broader like biohacking figure. For example, Gary Brecker endorses quite a few brands, but those brands, any brand he brings under his wing will just spike. And that's really valuable, especially when breaking into new markets. We're actually launching in Europe on Monday, all going to plan. And we know that the brands that are going to do the quickest there are the brands that have that kind of founder figure that can just get on socials and be like, hey, we're launching here, or we're going to this event, and you see a direct spike. So it's really clear. Another example is Mary Ruth's, is literally a woman called Mary Ruth, face of the brand, growing ridiculously fast. Not all brands have that though. Obviously, Element and Thorn are two of our biggest brands. They do not have faces to them per se. But yeah, I would say there's a clear trend.
Just add one thing. I think it's interesting. From my perspective, I think it's more the marketing style than necessarily organic social. Because I don't know if anyone here has heard of the business Water 2, the like under-sink filters, yeah. So their ads will have their founder at the forefront of it massively. I mean, I won't share their numbers because you wouldn't want me to, but that business is enormous. When I heard what they were doing, it's like, makes me feel a bit ill. And they have the founder at the forefront of their ads, but they would have zero organic social presence. Not zero, but it's not big. Whereas like a Salt is like organic social first. So I think it's more like the marketing style, in my opinion, and they've taken that, which I think is pretty genius, to be fair, is they've taken that trend, but they've gone, we're going to hammer it across paid social. And to me, that's more what we try and do. We don't do it as well as them, but hopefully. But we're trying to take that founder first approach, but yeah, pump it out more through like paid and advertising more so than organic social. And I do think it's a great strategy for some people. And so Billy is one of the founders. I think her own personal following is close to 1 million, and there are, that's obviously amazing. But I still think founders, maybe more like myself, who have no like real following, can still take that trend but do it in their own way, and potentially that's a bit more through paid. And equally, I do think there are loads of brands out there in the D2C space who have done incredibly well without it. So I think it is possible to do both ways. But I think, as we've all seen, like lots of the recent startups who've done it well have been very successful. So yeah, for me, it's just taking it that one step beyond organic. Yeah.
Yep. I think it's really interesting. You touched on like, do people want to see your cock-ups? And as humans, we have a negative attention bias. So like, you get a nice fat hit of dopamine from seeing someone fall over, or like the equivalent of. But then you get an equally big as a hit of dopamine of seeing them recover that problem and then do well from it. So I think like the more transparent you can be, not only builds trust, but also sort of does well on socials, because people will watch it over and over and send it to their friends, etc. And then the other rise I've seen, and we sort of touched on this point, doesn't have to be founder-led. There's a new phrase called EGC, which is employee-generated content, which I'm seeing more and more and more of. Like, ultimately, what it leads back to is people like buying from people. And so if you know who that is, you know who's buying there, you know who's in the team. I've seen like a load of brands in Australia do it recently, where you've got like someone asking their boss to go on holiday with like a 10-point PowerPoint presentation. It's like world class. It's genius. But yeah, I think we like buying from people, and that's what drives it.
The brand the gentleman mentioned there called Kinzo, it's a Sydney-based startup, but their content's probably the best I've ever seen, I think.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Yeah.
Thanks. This is probably a question to everyone. So, on the question about like the culture of partnering up with influencers when it comes to marketing. So, obviously, as everyone knows, things have changed from the days of where it was celebrities and they were the big influence, whereas now we have celebrities and influencers. Loads of partnerships become a big thing. Say if you have a, not the likes of David Beckham, but like the online influencers, like the KSIs, iShowSpeed, not the Diddy's, let's not go that far. But you do a partnership where they are your target, they have your target market and their audience, but maybe they have a view that sits outside of the fitness space, like a political view or a societal view that is not a popular opinion. How does that affect and this could be hypothetical, how does that affect your thinking? Another thing is there's quite a popular 10K half marathon brand that have certain views on what's going on in Israel, Palestine, things like that, where does that affect your thinking? Because it's not to do with fitness, but they may have a view that some people might think controversial, but then you've got to challenge the fact, well, maybe they have a massive audience that really fits into your target space. How do you balance that kind of strategy?
I can start, Sean. I think that, I guess like the crux of what you're alluding to is that who you associate yourself with as a brand, right? Whether you incur their views or things they might be talking about. I think it is an interesting one for brands. Our work that we do with influencers, we are much more on the micro level, so more on the affiliate level. We don't actually pay anyone a retainer, but people have free subscriptions from us, and that's how we have our community group. We work with about 350 to 400 people between 10 and 100K following in the UK. I'd like to say we vet as much as we can in terms of the people we work with, but being completely honest with you, I'd say more what we're looking at, rightly or wrongly, is what are the brands are they promoting? That would be the biggest question that we're asking as a brand. For instance, we know that you can't have exclusivity necessarily with an influencer unless you want to pay a lot of money. So they're likely to be advertising cross-category. So we don't have all the products within health and wellness, so they're going to be pushing other brands. And are we happy with, for instance, the quality of those brands more so? Obviously, if there was something known to us that we that we saw as a massive issue, or foresaw as a massive issue, then we wouldn't do it. Probably maybe is like a little bit more of an issue for like those really high level collaborations we're talking about, almost when the celebrity becomes the face of the brand, which we don't have. Then because you guys do quite a lot within influencer, you probably add better than me.
We don't have any brands I'm aware of that kind of tie themselves to those big kind of political views or anything like that. I think for the most part, when brands get big enough, they've got teams around them kind of making sure that they don't take a stance on those things. On the influencer piece, though, that's really interesting. I think it's potentially quite controversial, but we've actually stopped doing influencer seeding purely because we just didn't see an ROI from it whatsoever. It's also very hard to track an ROI. But to your point earlier, it really comes down to paid social and paid ads. Like, that is what grows brands these days. However you do that, whether that's the founder-led content or you know, anything else, I think A/B testing everything. We A/B test everything to the absolute extreme. And that's the same with content. But for us and for all of our brands, it's really paid social. Some brands have grown massively through TikTok. Others have never cracked TikTok, but paid ads in the market is how they've scaled. And I think that unfortunately it does come down to that. And then obviously as you grow, your ROI on that spend should get better as well and more efficient. But yeah, unfortunately, I think I don't know the ins and outs of it, but as a consumer myself, like if I see an ad associated with any influencer, I will just automatically swipe. So I think the difficulty of having to disclose that now has decreased potentially the ROI you see from doing that type of seeding. However, the caveat to that is that a lot of brands are moving into equity investor relationships. So for example, IM8, David Beckham is the founder. Arena Sabalenka is now an equity ambassador. So that's more the relationship stance that brands seem to be moving down, is having kind of 2 or 3 bigger hitters that obviously are fully invested in the stakes of that company. And then also ties back to that kind of category exclusivity without necessarily having to pay the big bucks because they're getting that equity. But that's very much once a brand's already established themselves.
Just in terms of what I think we would do as a business, I think down to trust and credibility, it's so hard, and you've got to be so consistent to keep trust and credibility, and it's easily lost. So I think for us, we'd always just err on the side of caution, and probably I don't think we've come across that particular scenario, but I'd say if it was a business decision that was, you put a gun to my head, I'd be like, right, let's not do it, and just go after something else. But yeah, like you build it, you build trust and credibility over years, and just one thing, and you can lose it.
I think one other thing I was just thinking about as you were chatting there is I think the big thing with influencers is that it used to be maybe you work with them for their influence, whereas now, and maybe it's a sad world, but it just all comes back to content. So what I was talking about earlier with organic social, again, all of our influencer stuff would be led towards paid creative. I mean, not to give away all of our secrets, but some of the best performing meta ads at the moment are literally screenshots of people sharing the product. Their name and handle is not even in it, but it's that kind of like authentic unboxing experience. I mean, this is just for us. For other people, it might be different. Equally, the kind of big trend at the moment in paid is whitelisting. So, you know, it's an ad from a creator's handle rather than from the brand. That's, don't be fooled, that's run by the brand. As a way of kind of like that top of funnel kind of increasing engagement and stuff. So I guess maybe it's just like a slight shift in the way that people are working, unless you're doing these bigger profile things where obviously their influence is massive. I think a lot of brands like ours are probably using it more as like a content creation channel rather than maybe using people for their influence like you might have sort of a few years ago.
We've actually had it. We dress a lot of celebs and influencers, and we've had it where after dressing this particular person, it came out that they'd done some stuff they shouldn't have done. The big difference was that it was a surprise to everyone. So that conversely to, you know, like we're trying to lead that anti-toxic masculinity brand, and then going and dressing Andrew Tate would probably be a bit of a red flag. Do you know what I mean? But it's a calculated risk. You can't do full due diligence on everyone's lives. There's a lot of skeletons in the closet. I think there's a difference between knowingly aligning with someone that doesn't suit your brand or your views or whatever, and that coming out post the time is a different story. But you know, if you were going after a toxic masculine crowd and partnering with Andy Trey is probably a pretty smart move, isn't it? So depends on the brand, the product, etc.
Hi, I'm Ankita. I am building a nutritional seasoning brand, and my question is for the panel that if you are stepping into the wellness industry, that means we also have to think about a lot of customer retention, because these people have to come back and back again for our brands because they trust us. But I understand this also comes with the product quality that we are giving it to the audience. But I would like to know, as a brand strategy, what were the initial steps or methods you used to bring that habit formation into these customers to trust your brand even more and come back to you again and again?
You love some good ones.
So in terms of specifically on the product? Yeah.
As a brand, like people coming back to you,
Yeah.
like getting them addicted to your product.
Yeah. I'd say one of the biggest things on retention, massively under talked about area, because it probably is the most important thing for all of us. And we've tested every single thing under the sun, and the biggest thing that's going to influence retention will be your product, more so than any clever back-end trick you can think of, or any email flow or anything. So definitely right in terms of retention to focus on the product, or at least the offering. I think there's certain things, obviously, I guess all the stuff we chat about with product quality, something for us would be taste. I can imagine that'd be similar to you in terms of if it's like in the seasoning capacity. Then the other thing I'd maybe think about from sticking to you is that kind of brand experience, which probably does go beyond product. So unboxing, particularly the first time, in their first order, what do they perceive? How good a quality is the box? Are you putting other things in the box? If it's like a free gift, make sure it's actually of quality and matching your product and experience. Even down to stuff that we've done with like couriers. So we found an uplift in retention by offering people the chance to choose different couriers. So a lot of brands will ship with Every because it is the cheapest, and to be completely transparent, we also ship with Every if you don't want to select something else. But offering people like Royal Mail, which people in the UK often perceive as being more trustworthy and stuff like that. So there are other things you can do around the product, I think. But in terms of, I guess, the product quality itself, I mean, like tasting test panels and stuff like that to improve it. Is that kind of...
Yeah, I'm probably the wrong person to ask about retention. But what we do is there's free gifts at certain months. We were only chatting yesterday about fridge magnets. I don't know. Might bring some fridge magnets out soon, but no. I think it's the standards, but the product is the foundation, right? As long as it's good. Like we're pushing subscriptions hard, like you, Hywel, and just keeping people using it. Frequency of subscriptions actually is something that we've amended recently and seen really good uplift, because the biggest churn rate was having too much product. So yeah, that's my layman's view of retention.
One other small point, I'm interested to hear what you guys do, because you've got a lot of subscriptions, but the biggest thing we play around with is communication on retention. So we send an email to all customers 3 days before an order. That single day in our subscription cycle is by far the biggest churn, because you're reminding people they have an upcoming order. You have the moral question, many brands do it, many good brands do it as well. And I've spoken to many people who go, what the hell are you doing? Just don't email them. But I would make a decent argument to say that yes, maybe from like order 1 to order 2, but if you can keep people to order 2 and you've told them about the order, for us it's quite important because they can change products and flavors. Beyond that point, they feel like they have a bit of a trust to you and they like the way you're operating in your business. The other point which I missed out, which I think has probably been the biggest improvement for us, has been customer service. And if you go on our Trustpilot, I reckon 50% of our reviews are around customer service as opposed to the product itself, which slight dagger in the heart. But it serves a point. Effectively, we will refund pretty much any customer who's got an issue, and the customer's always right attitude. So, you have a weird point where maybe 0.01% people don't like our product. They end up leaving a 5-star review because we looked after them type thing. And I think that trust piece, actually, I was going to chat about earlier, like reviews. People buy from people, but also buy from what customers think.
For us, we've A/B tested a lot of stuff, as I touched on earlier. It's core part of everything we do. We have a bit of, when we first implemented subscription in terms of how it sits on our PDP, it was quite polarizing internally. Because we kicked off the A/B test essentially whereby if you click on a product, you get to the PDP and then it actually automatically defaults to subscription. So subscribe and save 10%, for example. Quite a few, including myself, were like, that's awful customer experience because you're going to have naturally a lot of people accidentally just rushing through, especially on mobile, placing the order, realizing they've now signed up to a subscription that they don't want and ultimately resulting in churn. And is it actually good for us to be enduring that then backlog? Whereas actually it had zero impact. So I was proven wrong, which doesn't happen often. But now we run with that and it works really well for us. And yeah, again, we have not seen any difference in terms of cancelling subscriptions. The main reason, and we've sent feedback forms out for people that do, is pricing. So that's why it's so important for us in the market. Ultimately, the customer wants the best price in the market. And then in addition to that, there's lots of other things that we do. The biggest one that we get great feedback on is with every second order, you get a handwritten note from one of the founders, kind of just saying thanks for supporting a small business and maybe we need to update the copy now. But that lands really well with customers. And I think that personal touch we've got the most feedback. It's actually got his direct email on there as well. And he often is posting on Slack channels the emails that he gets in from customers off the back of that. And then with subscription orders in particular, every month in your subscription order, you will get a free sample. And it's from our top brands. So it's typically, at the moment, we've got like the Ultimate Human, Element Thorn. Those are the main ones that are kind of giving lots of samples to include in that. But it's that additional touch that I think customers, one, they love coming to Healf because the website's quite good, I think, bit biased, but you know, the flow is great and the customer well-being is exceptional. So you will hear back within 3 hours is our goal. Obviously at peak times that's changed and at the beginning it definitely wasn't that, but customers come to us because they know if something is wrong or they're not happy, we will probably over refund. But I think it's A/B testing, like is it worthwhile having customers value you for that and maybe spending a bit more on refunds, but actually the LTV increases in the long run.
Do you also publish these A/B testing results anywhere for you?
What, externally?
No. Is it for your internal team or is it also for the customers?
No, all A/B tests are just internal to decide on ultimately what decision we make. But every single change you see on the website is A/B tested for at least 8 weeks.
Guys, thanks for that. Just before we do a big round of applause, feel free to wait 1 second. Feel free to stick around for a little bit afterwards. If someone comes up to you and ushers you out, that's because we've got another panel and there's a changeover. If you're staying for that one, just let someone know if you've got a ticket. But there's some drinks upstairs and a nice space to mingle and network, etc. And now that little bit of housekeeping's out of the way, a massive round of applause for our panel.